In our last module, we explored epics, those big, ambitious objectives that help connect strategy to execution. Now we'll dive into the tactical level, breaking down and delivering value through stories, tasks, and bugs. More importantly, we'll see how the way we write and manage this work directly impacts our team's ability to deliver effectively. By understanding the different types of development work and learning to write clear, purposeful stories, you can help your team work more efficiently and deliver more value. Whether you're writing these items yourself or helping others write them better, the principles we discussed today will help you create the kind of consistent communication that drives team success. Let's start with a fundamental distinction that shapes how we manage work. In software development, we typically deal with three main types of work: stories for new features that need creative problem solving, tasks for straightforward engineering work, and bugs for fixing existing functionality that isn't working correctly. Now, you might be wondering why we need these distinctions. After all, isn't work just work? But these categories serve a deeper purpose than simple organization. They help signal to your team the type of thinking and approach each piece of work requires. A story invites creative problem solving, while a task might need precise execution or a specific technical approach. These distinctions help your team shift their mindset appropriately for each piece of work. Understanding these differences is crucial because it shapes how we write and communicate about work. Let's focus first on stories, since they're our primary tool for delivering new value, and then we'll see how the principles we learn apply differently to tasks and bugs. Stories are fundamentally different from epics in an important way. While epics are too big to estimate accurately, stories should be small enough to plan and estimate. They're the smallest meaningful unit in our work breakdown structure. But what makes stories particularly powerful isn't their size. It's how they help the person doing the work understand three crucial things: who they're doing the work for, what that person wants to achieve, and why they want to achieve it. This focus on the who, what, and why transforms a simple work item into a tool for building empathy and understanding. When your team understands not just what they're building, but who they're building it for and why it matters, they can make better decisions about implementation. Let's talk about how we can write these stories effectively. The traditional story format follows a simple but powerful structure: as a, I want, and so that. Let's bring this to life with an example. As a digital ad marketer, I want an interface that shows me ranked advertisements based on revenue they typically produce, so that I can evaluate the effectiveness of different images or ad copy. Notice how this format naturally captures all three elements we discussed: the who, a digital ad marketer; the what, a ranked ad interface; and the why, to evaluate effectiveness. But the real power of this format isn't in following a template, it's in how it empowers your team to find creative solutions. Focusing on outcomes rather than implementation gives your engineering team the freedom to apply their expertise. Instead of prescribing exactly how something should work, you're describing the problem to be solved and the value to be delivered. This leads to better solutions because, frankly, your technical team will often think of approaches you never considered. However, this emphasis on creative freedom must be balanced with clear guidance, and this balance varies depending on your team dynamics. Let me share a real example that illustrates why. I once worked with a web development team on a version 2 upgrade of a site. The site's whole purpose was user interaction, requiring login functionality. But when they deployed version 2, the login button had disappeared. When I asked why, they said login wasn't in the spec. I hadn't thought to add it because I didn't expect them to remove functionality present in version 1, especially something that seemed to be an obvious requirement. But within minutes of going live, I discovered the error and learned a valuable lesson in working with teams that build precisely and only what's written in the spec. This story illustrates an important reality of software development. Different teams need different levels of specification. While we want to empower creative problem solving, we must also ensure critical functionality isn't overlooked. This brings us to the importance of structure and validation in our stories. In my experience, the most effective stories include three key sections: the story itself, supporting notes, and acceptance criteria. The story follows our as a, I want, so that format. But sometimes you'll need multiple persona stories if different stakeholders have different needs. For instance, you might have both a user story as a user and a business story as sales. Your notes section provides crucial context, background information, user feedback, links to documentation, screenshots, or videos. Think of this section as your opportunity to share everything that might help your team understand the bigger picture. For acceptance criteria, I've found that using a numbered list format makes discussions easier. Team members can quickly reference AC3 rather than trying to describe which criterion they're talking about. But here's a crucial balance to strike. While acceptance criteria need to be clear, they shouldn't be so prescriptive that they stifle creativity. Leave room for exploratory testing and creative solutions while ensuring critical requirements are clearly stated. In the resources section, I'll include a PDF with both an example epic and an example story so you can get a better idea of what I mean. One question that often comes up is when to validate stories with stakeholders. While we typically do most of our stakeholder validation at the epic level, some stories, particularly those involving user interfaces or complex business rules, benefit from stakeholder review. However, finding the right balance in your feedback loops is essential. While feedback is valuable, too many review cycles can slow delivery without adding proportional value. I've found that stories implementing well-understood requirements from a validated epic rarely need additional stakeholder review. In contrast, stories defining and implementing abstract requirements often benefit from quick stakeholder checks. Stories give us a powerful way to communicate new feature work, but they're not the only type of work your team handles. Let's explore when to use different formats to help your team work most effectively. Remember how we said stories work best for new features that need creative problem solving? Well, not all work needs that level of context and creative freedom. Sometimes you need to communicate straightforward technical work or address problems with existing functionality. That's where tasks and bugs come in. Tasks are perfect for straightforward engineering work that doesn't require creative problem solving. Think about adding analytics tracking to a button. You don't need to write, as a product manager, I want clicks on this button logged to Google Analytics so that I can better understand user behavior. That story format overcomplicates something simple. Instead, write a task that says, add analytics for this button. Tasks work well for technical improvements, addressing technical debt, or implementing well-defined technical requirements where the why and the how are already clear. Bugs represent existing functionality that isn't working correctly. Unlike stories or tasks that add new value, bugs fix what's already supposed to be there. When writing bugs, clearly describe what's broken and how it should work instead. This helps your team understand both the current problem and the expected behavior they need to restore. The key is using the right format for the right type of work. Don't force everything into a story format just because that's what you're used to. Using the appropriate format for each type of work makes it easier for your team to understand what's needed and deliver effectively. This brings us to something fascinating about how people process information. When people have a massive pile of work to do and it's staring them in the face day in and day out, that will decrease their productivity. Taking the same amount of work and hiding everything but the current task and the 1 to 2 following tasks reduces cognitive load and improves productivity. Even when all that other work is waiting in the wings, giving your team the feeling that they're at about 80% capacity all the time will boost throughput. Similarly, when we consistently categorize and communicate about work, we help our team members think more clearly and work more efficiently. Think about what happens when someone looks at a piece of work. They need to understand what it is, what's being asked of them, and how it relates to other work. The clearer and more consistent our formats are, the less mental energy they need to spend just understanding the work. All of these practices, clear categorization, structured tickets, and complete acceptance criteria, add up to something greater than their parts. When you maintain consistency in how you format and label work, you reduce the mental energy your team needs to understand what's being asked of them, and instead focus their energy on solving problems rather than deciphering requirements. As a leader, your job isn't just to write good stories, it's to help others write them too. Start by documenting your team's conventions, always explaining the why behind each choice. Show examples of well-written items, then allow people to practice writing their own. Having team members present their stories during sprint planning provides valuable learning opportunities. They get immediate feedback from engineers and designers about what information is most helpful, and you can guide them toward better practices. We've seen how the way we write and structure work items directly impacts our team's ability to deliver value. From distinguishing between different types of work to writing clear stories and maintaining consistent practices, each element contributes to creating an environment where teams can work more effectively. In our next module, we'll explore how to estimate this work and forecast delivery times. But before we move on, think about how you currently categorize and communicate work items. Are there opportunities to make your communication clearer and more consistent? Could you reduce the cognitive load on your team through better work item structure? These questions will help you apply what we've learned to improve your team's effectiveness. Remember, these aren't just administrative details. They're fundamental tools for helping your team deliver value more effectively. When you get these basics right, everything else becomes easier.